to the meeting.
Right. Can I just let you know, Grant, Mark and Dan from EY are just trying to join us at the moment.
Okay, excellent.
And we're now live on YouTube.
Right. So we're now live and recording. Thank you, Leah. Right. Good morning and welcome to this virtual audit committee meeting. I'm Councillor Grant Nurden and I will be chairing this meeting. Our host for today is Leah and the committee clerk is James, who will be taking the minutes. Let me just get that there sorted. I would also like to welcome back to our external auditors, Ernst Young, represented by Mark Hodgson and Dan Cook. So welcome to you both as well. We will start our meetings firstly by taking a roll call, and at the same time, if you could just indicate whether you have any interests to declare.
Councillor Brennan.
Present, no interest to declare.
Councillor Bullman.
Present, no interests.
Councillor Catchpole.
Present, no declaration of interest.
Councillor Nurden.
Present, no declarations.
And Councillor Morrell.
Present, no declarations.
Can I check, Councillor Morrell, if you are a substitute member here or just observing?
Just observing.
Right. So James, if you could also just take
Councillor
Mancini
Boyle.
Yep.
I'm present and no declarations. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for that. So next agenda item is the apologies for absence. James, do we have any?
Yes, Chairman. We have apologies from Councillor Crotch and Councillor Holland and Councillor Vincent. And Councillor Crotch's substitute is Councillor Brennan, and Councillor Holland's substitute is Councillor Catchpole.
Okay. I wasn't actually advised that Councillor Vincent had. She normally does. So we could have arranged a substitute for.
She only contacted me half an hour ago to say she had a migraine and really apologised for not being able to attend the meeting, but she was unwell.
Okay. Thank you for that. Right, we now move on to the minutes of the meeting of the 22nd of October. And we need to just go through first the accuracy of those minutes. So I trust members will have read through those and picked up the, there's only one very minor typographical error that I picked up. After having gone through it the first time and submitting those to James for correction. So if we go through page 8 of our papers, any amendments there? Page 9, any amendments there? Page 10 is where the amendment is, and that's the 1, 2, 3, 4, the 5th paragraph, which starts with the chairman responded, where it is only the chairman responded. Sorry, I didn't pick that up, James.
Sorry, what page was that again?
On page 10?
10, yes. 1, 2, 3, 5th down. Yep.
So if you could just change that E to an A. Right. Moving on to page 11. Any changes to that? Page 12, page 13, page 14, page 15. All members, do you agree that those are an accurate record of our meeting? Can you just indicate? Thank you. Right, so I can sign those as a true record with that amendment. Right, so we then move on to matters arising, and what we're going to be doing here is we're going to first go through the minutes of the 22nd of October, and then we will go on to the matters that were arising from the 16th of July meeting, which we're only going to deal with the aspects relating to at that meeting was the draft statement of accounts. But now we are now looking at that again at today's meeting. So if we can just go on to the 22nd of October and just go through the matters arising from that. Does anybody have any specific, because I do have one or two matters arising from members? No. Okay, so I'm going to go to the first paragraph, sorry, the paragraph at the top of page 9, where we talk about our, it talks about members training, and it says being provided by SkillsGate, the Council's e-learning platform on risk management and cyber crime. And it says, and would be made available on members' iPads shortly. And what I'm just wanting to question is how soon is shortly? Because I haven't seen anything, and that was at our 22nd of October meeting. We were told that it was going to be shortly. So is there anybody here who can indicate why we have not received that training, or it has been made available? Rodney?
Chair, I think we need to take that one away. I'm not aware that anyone in the room has got an update on that. So if you bear with us, we'll take that away and get an answer to members.
Okay, thank you, Rodney. Then Rodney informed the meeting about negotiations with EY over the increase in the fee levels, and this was still not resolved. Rodney, if you can just give us an update on that, and also with regards to an email received from the PSAAA regarding the consultation that is underway.
Thank you, Chair. So the process for very much agreeing changes to audit fees for 1920 is there's discussions between the auditors and ourselves. And then if a resolution can't be resolved, it goes back to PSAA. So essentially where we are now is it's with PSAA, the national body who looks after the sort of the fees and the audit arrangement, for them to sort of investigate and determine. At the moment, we've got no anticipated time when PSAA will be able to make a decision and a recommendation on the audit fee level for 1920. The second point you want to mention was very much there is currently a consultation going on about how to organise the fee levels and agree changes to fee levels going forward. Very much, as I said, the current arrangement is for the local negotiation, but the suggestion is that actually if there's national issues, then PSAA should be taking the lead and then agreeing a national solution. So that's the proposal that is being consulted on at the moment, and we'll be responding to that before the deadline, which I think is early December, on that consultation.
Excellent. Thank you very much for that. The draft strategic risk register is one of the items on our agenda, so we will not be looking at that too much. I did thank the managing director for attending our meeting and dealing with the issues of our follow-up on recommendations. So, and I did thank him for that. So I don't think there was anything else under that we can bring up under matters arising for the 22nd of October. Do any of the other members have any matters that they wish to bring up at this point of the meeting? I don't see anybody raising anything. Right. moving on to the minutes of the 16th of July, there were a number of changes and explanations that took up actually 4 pages of of minutes, very comprehensively recorded by James. So thank you for that, James. And I went through those changes, and sure. I think I've got a copy of those draft minutes in front of me, and so they are paragraph or item 43 of the minutes of the 16th of July, and on the second page of that minute, there is mention of the note on officers' remuneration to be added later, as legal advice was being sought regarding aspects of this. The note would contain a list of senior staff with costs shared between each council, as well as the costs of any exit packages. When I looked at the note 25 on page 75 of our papers, I noticed that the costs related to the entire, well, the salaries of, let me just go to that page when I have it in front of me. Page 75. It states what the that South Norfolk Council and Broadland District Council share a joint senior management team. The employees detailed below therefore work across the 2 authorities and the costs are shared. But there is no split, there is no indication of what the cost to Broadland, for example, is. It gives the employing authority, but it doesn't give what is Broadland's share of that particular cost. And it's that particular cost, Broadland's share of that cost, that I would have wanted to see detailed in this note, because that is the amount that is reflected in Broadland's a statement of accounts, with the actual cost to Broadland. So, Rodney, if you'd like to comment on that, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Chair. The information we've got in the note would be sufficient for the accounts to be approved and signed off. However, I can understand the desire to show the cost to BDC within that note, so we will take an action to actually amend those accounts to include that cost to BDC. The only consequence of that will be actually, rather than be able to agree the accounts at this meeting, we'll need to end up with a delegation to actually sign off these accounts subject to any last amendments as part of this meeting. So ideally we'd like to be able to say we'll sign off the accounts as they stand at this meeting, but instead we'll just need to say approval for the chairman and myself to sign off the accounts after the meeting subject to any minor amendments that arise. But happy certainly to actually add an extra column to that table to put the cost to BDC into that.
Okay, that's excellent. Thank you for that, Rodney. Do any other members have any comments on that particular item for matters arising? Okay, I don't see any there.
Sorry, Chairman. Councillor Morrell has his hand raised.
Yes. Okay. Over to you, Martin.
Sorry, it was just on the point about the split of the salaries. Was it not under the heads of terms in the agreement between the split between the 2 councils as 55-45? was it not just a statement that would suffice to say that it was in those proportions, or was it not done in that way?
Rodney?
My recollection was that actually initially, to start with, some of the senior officers was shared 50-50, and then we changed when we put the one team in to 55-45. So it might not necessarily be an exact split we can use throughout the whole period, which is why we'll just need to do that calculation and get that information.
Okay. Thank you for that, Rodney, and thank you for your question, Martin. Right, any other questions on that note 25? No. Right, the next one on the minutes is details of the pension fund. We're in the statement. The value of the assets reduced by 3 million to 56 million. However, the liability of the scheme has also decreased down by 10 million to 81 million in 1920. Have there been any changes there that we will look at this meeting, Rodney? Or Darren?
Darren, respond to that one.
Yes, there have been some changes as the result of part of the McLeod judgment. So we've subsequently made a further change to decrease the liability by £231,000, and that's reflected in the current set of accounts that are included in these papers.
Brilliant. Thank you, Darren. Any other comments, questions? No. Then moving on to the next page of those minutes, and at the top of the page, a briefing on the account system could be organised virtually for members who would like to understand how the statement of accounts were put together. And I just wanted to thank Darren in particular and Rodney for putting together and organising a very helpful and very informative presentation at our last committee meeting.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right, I just had a question from Councillor Catchpole. These minutes of the 16th of July are not included in our papers. I've just extracted them from our draft minutes for that meeting, so I can't refer to a page number. Right, then the chairman also brought to members' attention a number of errors that required correcting, and these were the collection fund on page 23 should refer to 84.2, not 84. That correction has been made, Darren? Yes, thank you. On page 38, Norse should replace Norfolk. That's been done. I've checked that out. Clarifying if the trading profit for 2019-20 of Broadland Growth Limited was before or after tax. If we go to page 67 of our accounts, we will see that correction has been reflected in the accounts. So thank you for that, Darren and Rodney, sorry. Provide information to the committee on the reasons for the increases in short-term creditors and debtors. That is on page 70. So thank you for that. Councillor Hempsel has been added to the list of Broadland Growth Limited Directors. That's on page 78 of the papers. Clarification of how the £650,000 of interest was achieved. If I can just ask Darren to just clarify that, because I don't believe that we were advised on that.
No, I don't. Oh, sorry. I don't think we sent forward that information to you, but I have got that information now. So the majority of that interest amount is interest we achieved from investing with our externally managed funds. That made up about £420,000 worth of that interest. We also had £6,000 interest from a redemption of part of those externally managed funds. We redeemed £2 million, so we had some interest in from there. There's an £89,000 accrual of interest from loans that we'd made, which have subsequently been received in 2021. And the balance is just from interest that we've received from fixed term investments that have matured during the year. And we just, obviously that interest gets paid to us as the investment matures, and that gets added onto our interest received for the year.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions on that? No. I actually skipped something that had been asked. And that's, again, sorry, Sue, that's at the top of that particular page of the 16th of July minutes. The Chairman requested an amendment to the Statement of Accounts to make it clearer how the adjustment between the accounting basis and funding basis of 1.348 million had been reached. Rodney, are there any comments you'd like to make on that particular aspect? Because when I looked at these, I kind of struggled a little bit to find the figures, but you have subsequently indicated. Did you make any changes to make that particular aspect clearer in the accounts? Now, I would defer to both yourself and Darren.
Okay. We looked at it, but we were struggling to try and actually make it overly clear just because of the complicated nature of the accounts. So I think the key table for ourselves is on page 33 of the papers, where we try and show at the bottom of that page the table that reconciles the figures to the accounts. Very much where we try and say actually the breakdown between the surplus or deficit on the provision of services of 487 to take that to the movement in the general fund balance. I think that was about that's clearest we could present the information.
Okay, thank you, Rodney. Yes, because I did struggle to try and find where these figures were, and eventually that at the bottom of the table, bottom of that page 33, the 487,000 can be found on page 38 and page 62. The 2,018,000 is on page 61 and also page 39. And the 484,000 can be found on page 39 and page 59. So that, I don't suppose that is something that you would be referencing in the accounts, but if I would have thought it might be helpful to have notes that you could refer to, because I mean this is note 5, but if you could have some sort of like a subnote as to where we can actually go to see those figures, but I don't suppose that would form part of the statement of accounts anyway. So, but thank you for that, Rodney. Then also of those bullet points that we were talking about was to provide further information on income and expenditure service movements, for example, in economic growth. Any comments there that you'd like to make for us, Darren? There you are.
I think there any of the movements that were partly because we kind of restructured the reporting lines based around a new structure. So I think any variations in any of those lines were reflected in there. And I think certain services were now reporting to different services, so it kind of didn't always marry across, or looks kind of as if there was an imbalance. But I think it's mainly to do with that change in structure. There weren't any significant differences for any particular change in services or anything that we'd removed or added on in terms of our delivery, operational delivery.
Super, thanks, Darren. Right, so then we can. Do any of the other members wish to raise anything in relation to our 16th of July minutes. I don't see any heads going up and down. So we can then move on to item 5 on the agenda, which is the final statement of accounts for 2019-20, which I remind members we thoroughly went through at our meeting on the 16th of July. So effectively what we're asking is if you can just take us through any of the major and then possibly even, if there's time, minor changes to the accounts since we last looked at them. Over to you, Rodney and Darren.
Aside from the change to the pensions that I mentioned, which you can note on page 82 of your papers, the net liability is now, as I mentioned, 24,080,000, which is a change from the previous figure of 24,311,000. There was a incorrect debtors and creditors balance in the balance sheet, so we just had to switch a debtor to a creditor, as it was a balance to do with housing benefits and DWP payments. The balance is often switches from creditor to debtor, and it had been put in the wrong one this year, so effectively has been moved to the correct line. Doesn't affect the balance sheet, just totals, just has to move, and that's just reflected on page 40. So the miscellaneous short-term debtors, sorry, and short-term creditors have just changed. The balance has just been adjusted on each by 348,000. Then the major areas elsewhere are just we've had to add extra narrative around going concern, because obviously there's been particular struggles with COVID-19, and we've had sort of issues where we're not sure exactly how that's going to affect anything going forward for anybody really. So there's extra narrative on going concern, which is on page 57, and that's just been added just to give some more clarification on the effects of the ongoing situation.
So if I can just come in, Chair, I think the key point I'd like to very much say is actually following on from the draft accounts. These have obviously now been subject to the external audit, the EY review, and as Darren has mentioned, there's been a couple of minor changes to the accounts, but nothing substantial, nothing fundamental has changed to the accounts. But obviously for the next agenda item, EY will be reporting back on their findings from the audit. But the idea is after this meeting, subject to any comments from EY, we'll be proposing to actually sign these accounts off formally, and then obviously get these published on the website in line with our statutory requirement to publish accounts by the end of November. So very much I'm pleased to bring these accounts to you very much as a complete set of accounts ready for approval and sign off, subject to EY comments.
Absolutely super. Any comments from any of the other members? Sue? No. Nigel? No. Peter? You're very quiet today. So no
Because you're handling so superbly, Chairman, what would I need to say? You're obviously surging towards an early coffee break.
Right. And Martin, do you have any anything? Right, super. Okay, so right. So James, if we can have the wording that we can go ahead, subject to any further comments by the and maybe subject to any further adjustments that are required by Ernst Young. Can we have the resolution that we are going to be voting on? Where's James? Oh, there he is. You're on mute, James.
James, sorry, you're on mute still.
Sorry,
No.
can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Well, I think the resolution would be to approve the statement of accounts, subject to any adjustments by the external auditors, and delegate yourself and Rodney to sign them off following the meeting.
Super, thank you. So can I have a second for that? Thank you, Nigel. All right. So we go to the vote. Do we need to do it by roll call, or can we do it by show of hands? I'd be quite happy with show of hands because I can see everybody. There's my hand.
3, 4.
There are 4 members who can vote yes. So thank you for that.
That's approved.
Unanimously. Right. So now I'd like to again welcome Dan and Mark. I think Mark wasn't present when, or hadn't been admitted to the room yet when I introduced them. So welcome to you, Mark. And of course, Dan, it's always good to see you back at our meeting. So if I can just hand over to you, either of you who's going to present the Broadland District Council Audit Results Report for the year ended 31st of March 2020.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. So I'm the signing partner, so I'll run you through our audit results report, which supports your previous agenda item in reality. So a little bit of background and context to start with, and then I'll run you through some key highlights. So clearly the whole of the time period for the preparation of the draft accounts was during lockdown 1.0, if you like, and our whole audit has been undertaken remotely because of COVID restrictions, and there have been a number of additional financial reporting consequences and audit procedure consequences of COVID, specifically around property, plant and equipment, pensions and going concern, which I'll come on to. So having said all that, as context, as Rodney highlighted on the previous item, the fact that you've got a second set of accounts with very few amendments from the draft that you saw in July, and an audit results report, which in essence is positive throughout, I think you can reflect on a good set of draft financial statements and working papers presented by officers for our audit. So having presented and parked that context for you, just to run you through the detail. So we're working to a materiality level of £940,000 for this audit. So anything above that as an audit difference would cause us an issue for our audit opinion. And again, that's a number you need to have in your mind as we run through the audit differences later. We've got our audit risks set out in section 2, and I'll take you through the key highlights of those because they do provide you as a key assurance committee with assurances from the audit.
Sorry, Mark, can I just interrupt you? I think it might be helpful if you can refer to the pages of the report so that members can follow where you are and which aspects you're actually going through. So if you don't mind.
I don't have them in front of me.
Oh, the executive summary is on page 5, for example, onto page 6. Audit differences are on page 7, for example. You don't have that available because I see
don't
at
have
the
it
bottom
in front of my screen. These are literally high level messages that I'm assuming that you have all read the report, and I'm just putting out what I think are the key facts for you as members.
Yeah, because members were only received this report yesterday afternoon. So that's why I'm asking for the page numbers. But of course, if you don't have them in front of you, then members will just have to sit back and listen.
Section.
Okay.
So audit risks are section 2, and they run sequentially. So from the page numbers. So the fraud risks are first. We have nothing coming out of any of our audit procedures that indicate any instances of fraud or management override or financial misreporting. And clearly that is a key assurance for you as a committee. The next risk is around property, plant and equipment valuation. This is an area that was impacted by COVID-19 and valuation dates at the 31st of March. But on the basis that Broadland doesn't have a significant investment property portfolio or any, then the extent of fair value valuations is clearly limited, and therefore we were able to address that risk easily and conclude that we have no matters to report on property, plant and equipment. The next risk on the following page will be around the pension liability, which Darren has already talked about a little bit. There were two impacts this year on the liability in the draft statements. Firstly, there was a McLeod consultation remedy in July this year, which had the effect of updating the assumptions that the actuary used in calculating the liability for that equal pay discrimination case. That had the impact of reducing the liability by £231,000, as Darren set out, which I now understand has been corrected for in the accounts. We were under the impression it might not have been corrected for, so we will need to check that. But the figure is £231,000 either way. The second item is as a result of the audit of Norfolk Pension Fund. The pension fund auditor reported that the investment balance for the fund as a whole was understated by £13.72 million, of which Broadland's share is only 1.57% or £216,000. Asset values are an input figure to the actuarial model. We don't know what impact that would have on the pension fund liability, because that is an actuarial calculation. But at £216,000 and a reduction to the liability is not likely to be material. So officers have chosen not to either request an updated report on the grounds of cost or change the audit financial statements on the grounds of materiality. So that remains an unadjusted audit difference of £216,000. The next area of consideration following the pages would be on going concern. As Darren said, specific emphasis going forward as a matter of course for all auditors as a result of an updated international standard, but particularly key this year for the environment in which we find ourselves and particularly pertinent to local government, because the going concern assessment is 12 months from the date of approval of the financial statements, and that clearly covers 2 fiscal years, the second of which is without a local government settlement. And clearly, as Darren said, there are both cost pressures as a result of COVID and indeed reductions in income in 2021, again as a result of COVID, and all of those impact on the financial condition of the council. So we did request an assessment from management of going concern, which we have stress tested, looked at the reserve position, considered the liquidity of the council going forward over the next 18-month period, and we are comfortable that going concern is an appropriate basis upon which to prepare the accounts, and that there is no material uncertainty to disclose within the additional disclosure note that Darren referenced. We did request that additional disclosure note, which Darren has included and referenced in his introduction, because a lay reader does need to understand the conditions and the environment within which the council is operating. And that note is a very full and transparent disclosure of those pertinent facts. So then you're going to have to skip a section and go to section 4 of our report, which is, as you say, audit differences. So we have one unadjusted difference once we've checked that other pension change for Darren, and that is the pension asset difference of 216,000 would remain as unadjusted, and it is for this committee to concur with management that they will not adjust for that and provide the rationale within the letter of representation. And then you would have two adjusted errors, one being the McLeod adjustment of 231,000, the second being that minor classification error between creditors and debtors that Darren set out, and a couple of disclosure updates, the major one being around going concern, as we've discussed. So all in all, if you take all of that together, it's a good result in not many audit adjustments, but equally it would lead us to conclude we could issue an unqualified opinion on the financial statements. Then, so section 3 is the wording of our audit report, just so members could have a view of that. And then section 5 is our second responsibility around value for money. We didn't identify any significant risks to the value for money conclusion as part of our audit planning. So we have completed our standard work programme and have no matters to report, which would lead us to conclude we could issue an unqualified value for money conclusion. There are a few elements of audit work left to do between now and Monday, but none of those areas in high audit risk areas, because we have covered those off already as I have presented. So there may be some minor disclosure amendments required as a result of that work, which is why Rodney has requested and you have approved as a committee delegated authority for minor changes up to that point in time. So that just leaves me, I think, to thank Rodney and Darren for their support over the course of the audit, and we'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that, Mark. We have a deadline of the end of November by which to publish the accounts. If there are any changes as a result of work that you might still need and notes that might still need amending, will those be covered off by Monday, the deadline? And will we then be able to satisfactorily and with a clear mind be able to sign off those accounts?
That is the intention, and that is how the audit is resourced to complete.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for that. Do any other members have any questions following a very pleasing audit report? No? Right, so we are going to then just, I think our agenda would require us to just note with thanks the work of the external auditors and for presenting their letter or their results letter. So thank you for that from both of us. And Rodney, you wish to say something?
I think we should also just note that we need to also agree the management representations letter. So that is something that actually I will need the chair to sign as well after the meeting. I very much, this is representations from myself to the to EY, but we need to make sure that that's been referenced as well as part of this meeting, and that we need to give EY some management assurances about various issues relating to the accounts.
Absolutely brilliant.
And as I've got the floor, can I also say I appreciate actually that it's been a very difficult audit year for EY as well. So actually, particularly I think for Dan working with us to try and get this completed, so that is appreciated. Say it's been a difficult year for us to prepare the accounts, but I think it's also been a difficult year for EY. So I think that should be acknowledged, that actually it is pleasing to have got to this point to be able to be very close to signing these accounts off.
Yeah. And of course, we as a committee would like to thank yourself, Rodney, and Darren, particularly, for the hard work that you've done to get us to this point where we are now able to sign off those accounts. So thank you.
Thank you.
Just one last question with regards to the acceptance of digital or electronic signatures. Are you, as external auditors, happy with that process?
In light of the current circumstances, we are happy as long as we have an email from anybody whose signature is being used in that context approving its use in the relevant documents.
Okay. So Rodney, you've taken note of that. Right. So I thank you then for attendance at our meeting. Thank you, Mark and Dan.
You're welcome.
And we look forward to seeing you again. I believe you have a meeting at 11 o'clock, which you need to dash off to. So thank you again.
Yeah. Thank you. Have a good meeting.
Right. We now move on to the revised draft strategic risk register, which I believe Sinead is going to be presenting. But I would like to firstly just say thank you to Hannah and Sinead, the team that have been responsible for putting this strategic risk register together, for taking on board the comments of our last meeting in October. So thank you, and over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So as you'll remember, we brought the draft strategic risk register through to you in October for initial review after Cabinet agreed to the development of the risk management policy. So following that last meeting, we've updated the risk register to incorporate the feedback that we received from Audit Committee. So this has included reviewing the register itself and providing updates to include your feedback, which has included adding additional risks on the environment and the economy. We've also updated the column progress update to give you a fuller picture of where we currently stand on the progress against the key actions we've outlined within the risk register. We have noted there is a couple of typos identified within the plan, so on 2B and 4B, which we will update following the meeting. As just a reminder, as set out in the risk management policy, risks which are not considered to be strategic in nature and more operational, they are managed by directors within their service areas. These are kept under review and can be escalated to the strategic risk register if considered to be strategic in nature and have a large scale impact and require monitoring through CMLT and through members as well. So just prior to the register being presented in full to Cabinet in Q3, we're asking Audit Committee to review this updated risk register, provide any recommendations, and then we will maintain the risk register and then present it to Cabinet in full as part of the Q3 performance risk and finance reports. I think that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Sinead. Right. If there are any comments members would like to make on this new draft strategic risk register, I'd like to open it up for members. I know, Nigel, you had some comments to make at the last meeting. Are there any comments you wish to make?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. No, I think that's looking quite good now. I can't see any. I'm struggling today because I'm having to do it on the iPad, so it's very, very small. But everything I can see at the moment looks okay. I'm just hoping that the pad is going to last. I've only got 24% left at the moment. I can't charge it off my laptop at the same time, unfortunately. But no, that all looks quite good to me. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, excellent. Peter?
All right, the areas in red don't look of any great concern to me. Other areas seem to be okay. So, struggle as I might, I can't find any critical comments to make.
Right. Okay. So then, Sue?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, something's being written in about the economy and the environment. I find it a little bit cursory, a bit, okay, it's a first step, but hopefully over the months to come, that's the possible risks are going to be identified more specifically, and what can be done about them too. But as a starting point, I think they were essential to be built into this risk plan, and I'm glad to see them there now. Thank you.
Right. Thanks, Sue. I see we have Councillor Leggett, Ken Leggett, joining us at our meeting. I don't know that you have any interest to declare, Ken.
No interest to declare. Thank you. I'm sorry I'm late.
No problem. We're pretty much on the last, the second to last agenda item. So,
Right.
so thank you and welcome welcome to you for joining our meeting.
Thank you.
Right. I just have a question regarding the risk to do with the environment, which is number 13. And the risk there identified is that Council is unable to respond effectively to the environmental challenges, including the associated regulatory and legal requirements arising from climate change. And I would have questioned whether it should not also include changes to government policies, such as the one that, for example, they brought forward the date by which diesel vehicles are to be phased out, and the implications that this would have. For example, we'd have to then accelerate the installation of electricity charging points and how that would impact on our service delivery. So if you would like to comment on that, either Hannah, which I see you've raised your hand.
Thank you, Chairman. So I think on that point, it's a good point to make. In terms of the risk that is captured when it refers to legal and regulatory, it probably is referring to national policy changes that would lead to those impacts. But we could absolutely clarify that within the text to make the direct link to national policy changes.
Absolutely, no, that's fine, because I just wondered whether it was as a result of climate change, which is what the wording says, arising from climate change. I think that's very broad. We need to make it more specific as regards to changes in government policy on dealing with climate change. So thank you for that. Anybody else got any comments to make before we go over to saying yes, we are happy with that one? Yeah, nobody else has got any comments. So James, if we can just record that we have reviewed and we are happy with the new draft strategic risk register.
Yes, Chairman, I can note that.
Thank you very much. Right, so then the last item on the agenda is the work program. And where is the work program on the papers that we received?
Page 27.
Page 27. Right. So that was the last page. Oh, there we go. Right. We have quite a long agenda for our March meeting. And I just wanted to ask if there were any changes that might need to be made to this, because we have to look at this strategic risk register 3 times a year, and we have a work program in front of us, which is 3 meetings for 2021. So we will have, on every one of those, we will have the strategic risk register to review. And where is it on this work program? Who do I ask? Is that Hannah?
Just coming on that, Chairman. So we will add that to the future work plan. We're currently just working out the timings for all the meetings, as the risk register also feeds into ONS and to Cabinet. But our anticipation is to bring the updated risk register to all audit committees before it moves forward to ONS and Cabinet. So we'll make sure that's added onto the future work programme.
Okay, but from looking at this, it indicates that we're only going to have 3 meetings next year. Is that correct? Because we had a significantly greater number of meetings in this last year.
Chairman, I think we'll be having at least 4 meetings in 2021.
Okay, because when would those be? Because we have in March, we have in July, and we have in November. When would that be? Would it be between March and July, or would it be between July and November?
I think we'd need to talk to the audit manager about that one when she'd like to squeeze another meeting in. That's still to be clarified.
Okay, because I see the one for March is like quite long.
Yes.
And you know, it's to pack in such a huge agenda would be quite heavy on the members. So anybody else got any comments on the work program? No, I don't see any. So yes,
Chair,
yes,
just a suggestion. If you're going to put in another meeting, so say between March and July, cannot some of the March ones be put into the next one and reduce it there? Because if we're still in the state where we are at the moment, where we have to sit in front of a screen, that is going to be an awful lot. But even if we're back in the council chamber, that is still going to be a long session on its own, as you quite rightly pointed out.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would think that would be quite likely that we would split some of those items across the 2 meetings.
Okay.
But that needs clarification with the audit manager when she gets back from maternity leave.
Do you know when she does get back, John?
I haven't had a date yet, no.
Okay, super. Right, so if there are any other comments on the work program, then we can conclude the meeting, and thank you everyone for your